All right, everybody. So welcome back to the channel. I make beer. Today we're going to be talking about a bourbon aged barrel stout that I did. I made it back in February prior to me starting the YouTube channel, so I didn't video any part of the brewing process of it. I just kegged it a few days back, so I did get video of the kegging portion, and then we'll do a tasting and my impressions of the beer that we made. And if you want to follow the recipe, you're more than welcome to. The description will be down below as usual, and I'll put that up, post it, and then you guys can make what you want. So we're going to get into this a little bit. So I brewed this back February 16th of this year, 23. And then after fermentation had ceased, I transferred it into a secondary fermenter, which I used just a bucket, the 5-gallon pail. The day I brewed it, I also had oak chips, and so I soaked them in bourbon. I just had a mason jar, filled it with the oak chips, and then just dumped the rest, bourbon up until it filled it all up. And I let those soak for those 14 days that the wort was fermenting. After I put it in the secondary, I just put it up on a shelf in the basement here. It stays relatively, consistent down here in the basement, 65, 68, So it sat on the shelf with an airlock, and I just let it sit until the 25th, which was just a couple days back. That's when I kegged it, and we carbed it. Took about two full days to carb, and it came out really good, really delicious. First time I've done this type of beer where I let it age on oak chips soaked in bourbon barrels. Obviously it's not a bourbon barrel aged stout, but it's a clone, I guess. I don't even want to call it a clone, but it's going to be the closest thing without going out and getting a recycled old bourbon barrel, which I didn't really want to pay to have because they're not cheap. So I'll go over the recipe real quick, and then we'll get into the tasting after some video of the kegging portion of it. So the grains I used 15 pounds, 10 ounces of 2-row. I used 2 pounds, 4 ounces of Crystal 60. I used 1 pound, 5 ounces of roasted barley, and then I used 8 ounces of black malt. I used 1 ounce of nugget hops at 60 minutes. I used 0.4 ounces of Willet. We'll just say Wilmerite because I know I'm not saying it right. At 15 minutes, another 0.3 ounces at 10 minutes, and another 0.3 ounces at 5 minutes. I use US-05 yeast, and I used 2 ounces of oak chips. That was the quantity that I had used that soaked in that bourbon for 14 days. And if anybody wants to know, I don't remember what bourbon I used, so I can't answer that question. Steep the grains for 60 minutes at 162 degrees, mashed out for 10 minutes at 168. Brought the wort to a boil, and this is where I made my mistake. I was to do a 90-minute boil on this, and I forgot, and so I did a 60-minute boil. And I was supposed to add the nugget hops at the 90-minute point, which I didn't do 90 minutes, so they went in at the 60. And then, the Willamette, I think that's how it's said, Willamette hops at 15, 10, and 5. And then we chilled to about 70 degrees and then added our yeast. The original beer was supposed to come out at about, I think, 8.4, 8.9, somewhere in that range, mid-8s, we'll say, 8% ABV. Mine came out at 6.4. Had I done that 90-minute boil, I probably would have gotten a lot closer to that number. And I had realized after I had done the boil and my original gravity was so low that I screwed up somewhere. And I didn't really realize that until after I was reviewing my recipe for this video, and I saw at the top of it, it said 90-minute boil. I didn't know that. So anyways, so obviously it definitely, the ABV didn't come out as high as it was supposed to, but it still did come out as a really good beer, and I'm really happy with it so far. As I said, I haven't even had a full glass of it yet. I've just been sampling it and making sure the carb level was up. And then we'll get into the tasting of it. But the nugget hops are dual purpose hops. They're high alpha acid hop. So they're a good bittering hop, but they are used for aroma and flavor also. They have a woody, piney, and spicy aroma in the flavor profile. The Willamette hops are dual purpose also. They got a low alpha acid. The ones I used, I think, were 5%, which is the low end of the alpha acid on those typically. But they are good aroma and flavor hop, and they definitely add something to the beer. They have more of a citrus, floral, herbal, and spice aroma flavor. IBUs were 50, right in the mid-range of what they're supposed to be at. And as I said, ABV was 6.4. It's very dark. It's actually above what the guidelines call for. And it's at a 51 SRM. That black malt that I put in really darkened it a lot. So it's a wee bit darker than what it was intended to be, or what actually the classifications say it should be, because it's well above that range. But otherwise, that's fine. It's not a big deal. So we're going to move on to the rest of the video. And then at the end of that, we'll get into the tasting. We'll see you then. So here I got my keg on the left is filled with Sarstan. And then I'm going to connect it with a jumper to the keg on the right. Purge it with CO2, forcing the star sand through the dip tube and out and through the dip tube of the other keg. So at the end of this, I'll have a sanitized keg that's been purged with CO2, and I got another keg that's ready to go. And I do this every time I'm kegging. I usually have my one keg on the shelf that's got CO2 in it, or excuse me, star sand in it. So I'm usually ready to keg at any time. So considering my secondary fermenter was the 5-gallon pail, and I tried not to expose it to oxygen as best I could, so I just put a hose into the top of the bucket, just lightly started adding CO2, very low pressure, and then just started filling up the keg. I had to purge out a lot of the pressure in that keg because there's too much more pressure in the keg than what was in the bucket in order to get that beer to flow. But I think it worked out pretty well. Hey guys, welcome back. So this is our barrel-aged stout, bourbon barrel-aged stout. As you can see, pretty dark. Pretty dark. But got a nice chocolatey head. I didn't add any chocolate malt to this at all, and it has just a hint of chocolate. It is that definite stout aroma. I mean, this is just, you get a little hint of the bourbon. I'm not getting any really, maybe just a hint of the vanilla from the oak chips, but it's very minute. So you're getting that spice. A little floral, a little citrusy from those Willamette hops. Mm. That's a stout, man. That's a stout. Definitely getting that bourbon now. Obviously, that first chip. And when I, excuse me, when I added those oak chips, they were soaking the bourbon. I dumped the whole thing in. So the bourbon and everything went in. So obviously, there's going to be a strong, I'd say more of a strong bourbon flavor to this. I'm assuming than if it was aged in a bourbon barrel, but I don't know how much of that bourbon is actually extracted out of that oak when you put it in a barrel. So it may be a little bit more, maybe not. I'd have to compare. Nice mouthfeel. It coats the inside of your mouth. It's not thin. It's got some meat to it, if you want to say. Oh man, that bourbon! I'm a bourbon lover, so this is like really tasting good. I think 7.5 months I aged this on the wood chips really paid off. I think it would have been a lot. It wouldn't have been as mature had I just done it for a month or two, and so I very patiently waited on this. Luckily, having it sitting up in a shelf where I couldn't see it all the time in the basement helped, sort of kept it out of my mind, because every time I did end up catching a view of it, I'd go, oh man, I should keg that. But I was patient. I waited, did my best. And now we're going into November in a couple days, so perfect winter beer. Perfect winter beer. So as I said down below, I will put the recipe that I used. Go ahead and follow it, alter it. I don't, whatever you guys want to do. Make comments. If you have made a bourbon barrel aged stout, make a comment down below, because I've only had a couple and it's been a few years. So give me your impression on the bourbon characteristic of it being an actual bourbon barrel aged, in a barrel like that, and compared to what I'm getting here. But I'm getting not just a hint of the alcohol bourbon aroma, but you're definitely getting a good dose of it in the mouth. So that flavor is definitely there with that bourbon. This one is going to be a good one. This is going to definitely be the nightcap beer for a few weeks here, because I got 3 beers here and the IPA is the only one that's almost gone. Luckily, the wee heavy that I have is only a 2.5 gallon batch, and I've already given a lot of that away. So, but still, I got another beer fermenting. This one is going to be another one that's just totally different from what I've ever done, and another one I'm really excited about. But we're not going to touch on that one yet. I'll let you guys wait on that until it comes out. Also, in the description, if you want to leave comments on what I should do next, because right at this point, I don't know what I'm going to make next. I'm going to start racking my brain on what I want to do. I've been leaning towards an IPA, but I've got one here that I'm finishing up, and I'd like to try and keep it to something more traditional, or maybe classic. I will give you a hint on the next one. It is going to be a lager, so if you say do a lager, that's what I'm doing now. So, but yeah, if you want see something that I do, and then you want to see what the recipe that I do of what you think I should be making, let me know. Put it in the description below, and we'll see what happens. Keep liking and subscribing, guys. It's great. I've got, every day I check, my YouTube channel, and I get more subscribers every day. So I really appreciate it. I'm trying to build the channel as much as I can. I do got some other things in the works that are going to be brewing related, but not a necessarily brew day. There's a couple places I'd like to go to and interview the people that are there. But that's something that we're going to do in the future. I'm working on setting that stuff up. So we'll see what happens. So barrel aged bourbon, or bourbon barrel aged stout. Backwards, forward, same thing. Make it yourself. Give it a try. Turns out good. Be patient though. Let it age. Definitely makes a difference in the beer. Cheers, folks. We'll see you next time.